Life is a constant struggle. Some things are easy, some things not so much. But one thing is for sure, whether you make the most out of life is mostly dependent on how you react to tough situations. You can get upset, panic, let it break you down, or you can be indifferent and unfazed. The more you are able to be unfazed by life's challenges, the more you will get out of it. So let's understand how you can use indifference to become invincible to life's adversities. What is Stoic indifference? The Stoics had a value judgment system with three categories: virtue, vice, indifferent. Virtue and vice are pretty self-explanatory. They are based on your own thoughts and actions. Only virtue is good in the full sense of word. Alternatively, vice are the only bad. Everything that isn't virtue or vice consequently is neither good nor evil. It is indifferent. Everything outside of your control, on the other hand, is indifferent. Everything that happens is neither objectively good or objectively bad. It is your judgment of the event that paints it good or bad. One example that is used a lot to argue against Stoic indifference is cancer. Surely, cancer is bad, right? Not objectively. Let's say that two different people got cancer and both survived after a couple months of treatment. After they both recovered, one of them says, "Getting cancer was the worst thing that happened to me. The chemo was painful, and I'm so unlucky to have had cancer." The other person says, "Cancer was the best thing that happened to me. It was a reminder for me to stop focusing on pointless things in life and focus on things that truly matter. The chemo was painful, but it had made me a more resilient person and given me a newfound appreciation for my health. I'm so lucky to have had cancer." Are either of the two examples above unrealistic? Not at all. So how come the same event can be viewed by one person as bad and the other person as good? The only explanation is that the event itself is indifferent, neutral. Indifference exists between good and bad. Stoics claim that virtues are desirable, while vices should be casted away. Therefore, indifference appears to be the grey area between these two categories. Let's say that one or both of them passed away from cancer instead. Then the question becomes, is death bad? Once again, not objectively. The general opinion is that death is bad because you don't get to exist anymore. But anyone who really thought about death will realize that it is what gives life meaning. Without death, there is no reason to do anything because there is always a tomorrow. Therefore, is cancer bad? Only if you decide it is. The same applies to all the things in life, the value of things. In our everyday life, we come across many things that we call good or bad or indifferent. However, these are simply the value we ascribe to the external events around us. But their natural nature is neutral. If you can't decide if something is good or bad, the best way of dealing with that event is to mark it as indifferent. This conduct will preserve your inner peace and make you more able to live virtuously in Stoic terms. Indifferent versus not caring. Being indifferent doesn't mean you have to not care about anything. It just means you should accept whatever happens and see it as good things as much as you can. We are not in control of the outcome of any event. We can try our best to influence it, but it's ultimately not something that can be controlled. This is why the Stoics also had the concept of preferred indifference. Things such as health, wealth, beauty are preferred. Things such as death, disease, suffering, poverty are not preferred. But when anything happens that is not preferred, it does not bother the ideal Stoic. How to use Stoic indifference? Understanding the concept of Stoic indifference doesn't make it easy to apply it in your life. So here are some tactics that help you to use Stoic indifference. Step 1. Creating the canvas. As humans, we have a natural tendency to complain. However, complaining actually changes the way you think. Most of us have a habit of complaining about anything we don't like. And the result of that is we automatically see things in a negative light before we can even think about being indifferent. This might not sound like a big deal because everybody does it. But any linguist or neuroscientist would tell you that using negative language makes you think negatively, which makes you a more negative person. If you wish to use Stoic indifference, the first thing you must do is stop complaining. On top of that, the language you use in general also influences the way you think. So another way to become indifferent to external events is to use objective language. For example, instead of "that son of a bitch gave me the wrong coffee," you can say "this is not the coffee I ordered. It is probably an honest mistake." Getting upset by it benefits no one. Once you use objective language to describe a situation, it will become easy to be indifferent to it. This applies to anything big or small, even if you are facing a crisis. Step 2. Painting the blank canvas. Once you are able to be indifferent to something, the next step is to be able to see it as a good thing. For most events, it's possible to see it in positive light. For example, if you plan to go out and started raining, you can see it as an opportunity to catch up on your reading lists or spending more time working on a new skill. But sometimes it's hard to put a positive spin on things. For example, you're already outside and starts pouring. At the very least, you can be grateful for it as it allows you to practice being indifferent. Which, in doing so, you have made the fact that you are cold and soaking wet a good thing. On top of that, to use rain as a metaphor for adversities in life. The more you stand in the rain, the more you get used to it. So, the next time it rains, you will be unfazed by it. Voluntary discomfort can also help in this regard. So, next time something bad happens to you, don't see it as a bad thing. Use the power of Stoicism to make it a good thing. You will be unfazed by the events that make most people panic, and you could even be grateful for it. Remember, it's not the event that upsets you, but rather your judgment of that event. If you want your social media to be filled with good stuff, then make sure to follow us. This will tell the Insta algorithm that you are interested in Stoicism, which will recommend you topics related to self-improvement. Also drop a like, subscribe to this channel, and we also have a Twitter handle. Make sure to follow us there as well.